Well, hello and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name is Gavin Smith, and it's a joy to welcome you today to this church administration podcast. We love talking about all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. We're passionate about it. And my special guest today is Penny. Penny, welcome.
Hi there.
It is good to have you on. Our listeners love you, Penny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've had some good feedback from Penny. They love it when you're on. High rating podcasts when you're on. So,
I just remember the one of the very first comments about I think it was about Tim Wyatt, and I'd said what a great accountant he was, and you referred to that conversation about him being a wicked accountant or something, which he then picked up on his podcast. So yeah, absolutely.
I think he appreciated being called a wicked accountant. Yeah, it's funny. So it's great. So Penny and I today's podcast is really kind of chatting and focusing on the conference that we went to last week, the only possibly church administrators conference in the UK. So run by UCAN, which me and Penny are both involved in. Big thank you to the Cutting Edge team who made it work and take the time to put on something. And I think we had probably about 100 people there, wasn't there?
Yeah, they definitely were, with the team members who helped put it on, and yeah, definitely.
And I left.
It was good this time because it was slightly different from previous years in that there was a slightly different mix of people who were there. Actually, some of the ops managers and directors have managed to get their pastors, vicars, senior leaders to come along with them. That was really insightful. Speaking to a couple of them on the day, they were just so enthusiastic about seeing such and such a body's world, or understanding actually there's spiritual elements to administration. We know it's a spiritual gift. I'm sure you've talked about that on many occasions, but there is a spiritual nature to it.
Yeah, it's great. And that partnership that we need, don't we, between our elders or our senior leaders and our function doing operations, the relationship is so key. So to have people there is just like a massive sign of commitment. So good stuff. So we're in London in the Big Smoke. Lots a full day packed with stuff, and I guess we're not going to do it justice to do everything, but we wanted to get together and say what are some of the highlights, what are the things that stuck out to us. And if you weren't at the conference, then maybe that'll encourage you to kind of log in and see some of the sessions, and they are available online to UCAN members. You might even consider joining and being part of UCAN as well from this. So let's go to the first session then. Andy Bagwell kicks us off, doesn't he?
I wouldn't say so much kicked us off as rode us off.
He did.
Andy sat on a pink exercise bike from memory.
And it was an unusual start to a conference. I was sitting there a little horrified.
I wondered how on earth he was going to link this to anything to do with administration.
So
for those listening, Andy is one of our exec directors at UCAN, and he proceeded to deliver what I thought his intention was to deliver the entire talk while sitting on an exercise bike, which, no disrespect, but it was pink, so I just couldn't get away from the fact he was sitting on a pink bike. But anyway, Barbie sprung to mind. Anyway, probably not allowed to say that, but his point was he was talking about his spin class and that he'd been I know you do football, Gav, but my age-appropriate exercise is also a spin class because you can stay sitting down for the majority of the time. It seems to be really high-tech. He was talking about the different variety of intensity and that kind of thing, in his spin class, which kind of allied a little bit with the variety and intensity of what it is we do as administrators. But also, I was thinking about that from our Christian walk. I was just telling you, I actually went to a spin class this morning. Great job, Penny, 6:30 in the morning. And it was quite interesting because I think there's a book about this, Practicing the Presence of God. Have you come across that?
No.
I need to look this up because it's one of those that's in my head and I should have checked it before I came on. But I decided I would do my spin class this morning in God's presence, which sounds most bizarre to most people. I'm just trying to just learn to be a Mary, not a Martha. That was one of the things that came up last week as well, wasn't it? Our relationship with God being so important in the busyness of our world and our workplace. So I decided I was going to do my spin class in God's presence, which I think it was highly appropriate that just before I set off for the gym, I read, "The Lord is with me, I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" Just figured the guy at the front of the class, what is he going to do to me? Nothing. The Lord is with me. So I did. I sat there in that class and I I was thinking about, I have done a training on a church training on this, but I was even listening to the music. I just mentioned this to you before. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river deep enough. I'm thinking, I'm sure there's a scripture passage on that. But yeah, we can do our everyday in God's presence.
Yeah.
We really can do that. But there was a point where I actually missed the instruction from the guy in lycra at the front because I was so busy concentrating on what I was doing, and it just made me take note of I missed a vital instruction because I was too busy
Yeah.
doing. And I know I'm taking the metaphor quite a long way away here, but it made me think, how often am I too busy doing my doing that I miss what God's trying to talk to me about?
Yeah.
So that's my morning, and that's my link really neatly to
Yeah.
Andy's class last week.
It was
Not class,
great. I
Andy's talk.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was a great illustration, and I think I really appreciated Andy's thinking about, the kind of change of zones, change of intensity. He had all these kind of like digital pictures, doesn't he, of his results and stuff,
Yeah.
and the impact that that had on him. And it was a really, really good thing that actually in this season now, where the whole point of the conference was kind of trying to do more or trying to maintain what we're doing, but with less and
Hmm.
less resources, less people, and that can feeling of a bit of pressure on us. And in different zones and different intensity, we're going to feel it. And even what you were saying there is, as you get busier, you lose that focus. You can lose the instructions. You can actually get bogged down in what we're doing and miss the bigger picture. And Andy was a great point, was that how often we can forget the main thing. And I know in one of the sessions we were talking one day about 1 Corinthians about Paul says, first importance as a gospel, first importance that Christ died for us and that he rose in accordance with the scriptures. And you think, yeah, it's easy for us as practical, task-driven, tick list people. We love all that, but to be doing rather than just enjoying grace and enjoying the gospel and keeping the main thing the main thing. And so yeah, it was a nice kind of start to the conference. Anything else you got from him?
Yeah, I was just looking back through my notes because I think I was sort of approaching the conference doing more with less, all that kind of thing, thinking, yeah, fewer volunteers, fewer resources, less whatever. Yet how many times do I preach on God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, or actually all the resources are there. We've been given everything we need for life and
Yeah.
godliness. So actually, it's not about not having enough. It's about actually he is our sufficiency.
Mm.
So either he's given it to us and we're not using it right.
Yeah.
The resources are there, the people are there. We were challenged about, where are the people? Are we allowing people to walk in their discipleship journey, or are we just keeping things to ourselves? Are we employing people rather than letting volunteers do
Yeah.
things? All of that kind of conversation. But I guess it's the whole stewardship of either we're not using things right, or we're perhaps even doing too much.
Yeah.
Are we trying to achieve too much? So is
Yeah.
it about we're trying to do as much as we've always done, just with less? Or has the fact that we've got less, or does the fact that we've got less mean we should be doing
Yeah.
less? And that's always a
Yeah.
great challenge, isn't it? And I think most administrators would go, please, can we do a bit less?
Yeah.
You know, that's a really difficult conversation to have because I often find those who are being the visionary leaders of the church probably want to do more
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
more seems like we're reaching more people, we're teaching more people, we're leading more people. Um, so what
It
does less
does.
mean?
Yeah, it does raise things about capacity, doesn't it? And
Mm.
actually, what are we able to deliver, and what's realistic, and that. And I think hopefully there's some good takeaways there for people to start having conversations and saying, actually, we've always done it like this, and this really does come back to us as kind of admin and ops. We like the way we've always done it. We don't,
Mm.
a lot of people don't like change, don't have the time to kind of. Somebody said to me after the first session, it's like, I need to work on the system, but I don't have time to step away from the system to be able to do the work. And I think that's probably a common sense of that. And so, the real encouragement to kind of keep the main thing, keep the gospel. How do we disciple people, and how do we include more people to enable us to actually do more than we were doing? And it is a change of thinking, it's a change of mindset, and and some of us are going to be doing that better than others. Some of us are going to have to learn through mistakes in doing that. For others, you're thinking, "Gosh, this is the way I've always done it, and I always want to do it." And yeah, so it was a good challenge. I think it's a good challenge for me sitting as in part of a bigger church that we could have the funds to go and employ somebody to do something, but actually, if we can gather a group of people together, I wonder what gifts we've got in the congregation that we haven't gone and thought through, that we could deploy and get people involved in. So that was really good.
That leads really neatly into the session that you and I both listened to with John Truscott.
Oh, John
He's
Truscott was back, wasn't it great?
grandfather of UCAN, or is he the father of UCAN? Anyway, he's a great guy, but he really challenged us
Yeah.
to think about, are we trying to fill a role, or are we looking at how do we disciple somebody in terms of these are the gifts that they've been given, that we have the discernment to see in them.
Yeah.
How are we helping those gifts to come out? How are we
Yeah.
providing an environment where people are able to utilize and really flesh out and be discipled in discipleship, meaning learning and
Mm.
following, and be discipled in, the gifts that God's given to them and the person that they should be, rather than just filling a task because it needs doing. And
Yeah.
I know sometimes there are tasks that need to be done, but I wonder how often, as you just said there, we miss the gifting which is in the congregation
Yeah.
because we haven't had a conversation about it, we haven't asked about it, we haven't done our research, we haven't got alongside or built a relationship. But there was some other brilliant stuff in John's seminar, wasn't there?
He was great. I thoroughly enjoyed John and loved him, and I think he wanted us to kind of reverse our thinking, don't we? So we love a good rota, we love a filled rota, we love a rota that just consistently works. That is a
Yeah.
joy. But
Yeah.
he was thinking reverse thinking, and the question he asked is, what role in church life will help grow as a disciple of Christ? So
Yeah.
if we put someone into a role, where are they going to grow? How can they grow? And what things could we explore that's going to enable that to happen? Where can we give some leadership? And it's a different way of thinking, isn't it?
It's a really different way of thinking, especially when you are it's your own way of thinking, but it's also a way of thinking about admin and ops, because quite often somebody said to me afterwards, why were you even talking about that at your conference?
Mm,
Well, actually, because our job is also the Great Commission.
yeah,
It's not just to fill the rota and get the jobs
yeah,
done. Our job as admin and ops is also to disciple people. So it's not, a spiritual
yeah,
monopoly on one part or another. But yeah, how great to have the privilege to be able to have that first contact with somebody and go, I really see that God could use you over there or over
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and it was great. John sort of addressed these sort of the ongoing complaining that there is from people that in churches that are going, there's not enough people. We're not finding people to fill roles, and trying to do a notice, and then nobody signs up, and you're like, what is going on in the church? And he kind of did spin it around, not just in our thinking, but saying, actually, what about if we considered for a minute, what does the church have that we can offer people?
Yeah,
Do we have some vision for the role that we're calling people to? How does it connect to the gospel? How does it connect to the mission of what God's called us to do? Is there room to develop it? Is there room for that person to develop it? And he had like 10 points, didn't he? And I don't think we're going to be able to nail them all, but it was a really good thing, saying, actually, you need to get this stuff in place before you start calling people and asking people. And there was some really some good stuff in there.
yeah, I mean, I love the fact that I wrote down, I've got my notes here, as you probably
Yeah.
have there. What are we doing to make it easy to serve? And I don't just mean how to fill in a form or get your DBS
Yeah.
check done quickly or a bit of training. Are we actually providing that environment where people want to serve? It was, I mean, the first four I've got on this page are the church vision I can own. I've been really challenged of late,
Yeah.
just in terms of people's contribution, whether that's financially or resource-wise or time, just something they actually identify with, to a cause that they
Mm,
can see where there's an impact. So I always go back now. It was that story you told me about joining the dots up, and so many
yeah.
times you'll say join the dots with what you're doing to the gospel.
Yeah.
Join the dots from what you're doing to the gospel. And when the church vision is gospel, every single everything we do, everything we ask of anybody or invite people to join with needs to be viewed through the lens of how are we going to reach people with the gospel?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And a reminder again, isn't it, of how that connects is great. I really liked his point about have a scheme with a champion. So like have a volunteer coordinator or someone that helps people connect to different roles in the church. And this was interesting because a lot of this responsibility lies on me in my church. So new people coming in, stuff they've put on their application form of things that they might like to get involved in. They're completing that without really knowing everything that happens and where they could possibly play a part. So this idea of actually us appointing a kind of volunteer is not the right word, but sort of a service coordinator or something, somebody who can kind of connect in and say, let me introduce you to this and this. Why don't you go and try this team for a week and see if you really like it?
Yeah.
We
So,
don't do
so we
any of
have a
that.
volunteer. Yeah, we have a volunteer coordinator. She's called Tracy. She's awesome. She's been to a couple of UCAN events as well. I think some of you might know her from maybe last year.
Cool.
So Tracy is our volunteer coordinator, and her role is to match somebody's interest with a position. And she has the most incredible conversations there. She does a lot of community engagement as well. So she sees much broader than just a Sunday
Yeah,
serving
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
So there may be somebody who comes along with, do you know what? I can't do a Sunday because I bring my grandchild, but I could do a Wednesday night, or I could do something during the week or whatever. And she just gets those great conversations because if she's in constant contact with different ministry leads,
Mm,
somebody's had to try there for a few weeks, actually didn't suit them,
yeah,
but she knows the skill sets so they can come back and rework. And,
yeah,
you know, I think it just helps having that coordinator to know where is the need at the moment.
yeah.
You could give somebody a part-time, I know you want to serve, but isn't serving such a great way to get to know people, especially when
Exactly.
you're new in church? I do think that's where you start to meet your tribe.
Yeah,
Serving alongside. I was talking with a guy the other day who said he was part of our church when it was very small, and he was a brand new Christian. And he said, I was discipled by putting chairs out on a Sunday morning.
yeah.
Not the physical putting the chair out, somebody alongside him, working with him,
Yeah.
talking to him through his journey. And I just think sometimes we
Yeah.
want this consumer, I'll go do that and then I will, but
Yeah.
actually getting alongside people,
Yeah.
part of their spiritual journey. Discipleship isn't a once ever or once only. It's
Mm,
ongoing, isn't it, for all
mm.
of us?
And that
Yeah,
understanding
keep it a champion.
of team is great, isn't it? Yeah. So as I'm not just filling the hour slot doing kids work, but I'm there as part of a team, and we are serving the kids together, and that it's just a slight change of emphasis, but it's lovely to kind of build that, and people do experience discipleship and grow in maturity in Christ, through those times. Which is great. So he had some great stuff, and I think just things like giving people like clear role descriptions and boundaries and what they can do, what they can't do, because people come back to you and ask you lots of questions where you're thinking you could probably just decide that. You guys could develop that and use your skills and gifting here. So some room as well, to grow the role.
Yeah, and I also think the how did you find the narrative is a commitment that is limited. Well, surely we want everybody to be all in and completely unlimited, but I love that point about actually make it time bound.
Mm.
Have you ever done that in your church?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we've asked people to say, like, would you give a year to this? Or, we think this is going to take 6 months to get to know people. And then, would you consider a year after that? So, yeah, I think it's good. But I wonder how many roles we do that for. People do
Mm.
get stuck in a tea and coffee rota or a refreshment rota or something because they really enjoy it and they love it and they don't want to go outside that comfort zone. And I guess it's us thinking individually rather than just thinking rotas. What's going to develop
Mm.
people? Actually, you've got some leadership skills here. Would you consider shifting across into something else and doing something different? And I love those conversations. I just wish I had more time for that. But actually, John's recommendation of find someone who could maybe do like 3 hours a week or 2 hours a week, and they just connect with people, or they think that way on Sundays, is could be a good game changer. So worth considering for your church.
Definitely.
Anything else on John's before we dive into Jules's message?
Um, I've written a sentence or a question that I've never really thought about before, not in so many words. How does this deliver discipleship. And it was just a really interesting change of the use of the word deliver.
Yeah.
I've never really thought of delivering discipleship, but it's that
Yeah.
whole point of
Yeah.
how can we use this to serve the purpose of discipleship. So yeah, absolutely. It was just an unusual thing for me to write down, but it must have been said, otherwise I wouldn't have written it in those words. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was brilliant.
Absolutely
The
right. I think,
HL seminar that wasn't.
and it's probably good to point out here as well, isn't it? It is about service and volunteering, and we're never going to
Mm.
find a role for every single person in the church with some sort of full analysis of their gifting and deployment. So if you're listening to this thinking, right, what do I do from here? Then start on one team, start on one area, and see what kind of success you get, and get some feedback from them, and maybe part of it's adjusting our style and our thinking rather than it is expecting too much from those who are serving. But yeah, we just all need to jump on board and play a part, don't we? We want to see this 80-20 thing that people talk about, that 20% do 80% of the work of the church. I'm glad that's not the case in our church, and I want that to be different in lots of churches. Where does that fall for you, Penny, on your place?
So I think post-COVID, we've got quite a different demographic in church. We've still got the level of attendance, but it's a different group of people.
Hmm.
It's still the same core in the middle. Um, I just think how many times we say never underestimate the power of an invite, because so many people see, especially if you're a well-functioning team or church service on a Sunday, they come by fit. Surely it must be fine. Well, every team needs extra
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think we need to be on the lookout all the time for having those conversations, whether it's over a coffee after church or whatever, and help our teams, empower our teams that they too can have those
yeah, yeah,
conversations. Make it a team that is so exciting to be part of. Let's not keep being asking. Let's celebrate the achievements of some of our teams.
yeah.
And then people, I want to be on that team because it looks like it's really good fun.
Mm,
That is a great way of recruiting by attraction as well.
yeah.
Um, rather than by appeal. But yeah, we sometimes people can come and they don't know how to fit in. So don't
Mm,
underestimate the power of an invite.
yeah. Yeah, it's good. And I think one of the things we've been chewing over for the last year has been kind of transferring the gospel and the work to the next generation. And John just lovely saying, I love that perspective that we want younger people serving, but he's saying, don't forget this, 50s, 60s, 70s group, that may have stopped doing COVID. And maybe we need to think about a strategy of how we continue to have them involved and bring their wisdom and bring their maturity to bear on our younger groups of demograph, and there were some good challenges in there which I haven't kind of fully thought through yet. But yeah, if we just go from that, we take this from the older folk in our church and we go that, right, go for it, young people. It's not
There's
going to be a
things.
healthy thing, is it?
No, we'll miss things. That it's like when you replace somebody who's been a teacher for 100 years or maybe even 30, with a newly qualified. The experience isn't there, is there? The wisdom and the learned experience that you can't pick up in a job description. So
Yeah,
yeah, and we all need spiritual grandparents.
yeah, yeah. We learn so much, don't we, from just serving alongside them, let alone
Mm.
sitting and having a meal or coffee. Just seeing their example, seeing what they love, what they're passionate about, it just overflows. And I
Mm.
think that maturity it has a great effect, a great gospel effect on the church. So if you're an older person listening to this, serving in your church, thank you. And don't think your time has come to an end and you need to pass this on, but continue to encourage that younger generation, continue to work alongside them. We definitely want to see that in churches. So that's cool. Um, we've probably got time to jump into Jules's message at the end.
Okay.
Super intelligent, bright Jules, kind of bringing her pearls of wisdom. Her message was centered into, a lot of it was culture. And,
Hmm.
I kind of finished the conference saying, I've got three things on my board, gospel doctrine, which we want there to be great gospel teaching. We want people to be discipled. We want people to be serving, that kind of gospel doctrine section. And then gospel culture, what's the flavor, what's the experience, how do we do what we do, and how do we do it in a way that just reflects Christ and honors him. And then that gospel effect, that if we've got great doctrine and great gospel culture, then we're going to see gospel effect. And just that celebration of gospel effect is what I love doing. And those are kind of three things that I'm on my board saying you need to be reminded of this. And I think the reality is we do spend quite a lot of our time, I think, as ops and admin in the gospel culture section. We are going to be setting the flavor, the tone, the outworking of people's discipleship or examples or models, all of that stuff we're involved in. And I know for some people talking to them after the conference, they were like, I didn't realize that I was responsible for this. I didn't realize that I've got a part to play in this. What did you pick up, Penny, chatting about culture?
We are the culture carriers, aren't we? Especially if you're there all day, every day, that we can sometimes be the first person that, I don't know, somebody who's come in as a room hirer or come in for the
Yeah,
food bank, we might be the first person they meet. We are Jesus in person to them,
yeah,
his hands and his feet. And I don't say that disrespectfully or heretically. We are the hands and feet of Jesus to that person at that time. So we need to be displaying that. I think Jules called it Jesus culture, didn't
yeah.
she?
That's what.
Uh,
Yeah, that
you
was her
know,
language, wasn't it? Yeah,
yeah, but we need to really work on that culture within our staff teams. Some staff teams have it great. We all have bad days, don't we? We all have bad days, but the culture is, I'll say, Gav, I'm sorry, I'm having a really crap day. Sorry, I don't know if I want to say that. And you'll pick me up, or you'll give me a scripture, or you'll, give me a talking to, or whatever. And we need to be not worried about doing that. I
hmm
think, we need to hold each other accountable, because at the end of the day, we might be, did I read it the other day? I think I read somewhere the other day. We might be the telling of the gospel, the only telling of the gospel that person has heard all week
yeah,
or
yeah,
year or month or whatever. And that telling is through our actions, through our demeanor, through the way we present ourselves. Um, and that's for us within our teams, within the people that we meet, within the atmosphere in the building, whatever
yeah,
it is. It's not just a touchy-feely atmosphere. It's that being in God's presence at all times.
yeah, yeah. It was good. I think Jules is great, and I think there's probably too much content in it. I was like, Jules, we could have done this. We needed you earlier in the day, and we needed
All
to
day.
break this down. And there's just so much more she can say, and I'm sure she probably felt that. It's like I've got all this content to go through, and whenever I talk to my leaders about culture and something, it can sometimes sort of rub against in the wrong way because it's the kind of the wrong kind of language. And I think if I was to kind of try and define culture and what we're using is kind of who are we and how we work together is kind of kind of how I've kind of trying to pitch it is actually that you guys are interested in culture, but you just don't use those words to describe it. And as Jules used Jesus culture and I use gospel culture, we're talking about the same thing here, and we want the same outcomes, don't we? Actually, and so Jules just had some great tools, didn't she, to go right. Okay, every team is going to experience conflict. There's going to be conflict with staff members. There's going to be times where volunteers are going to fall out. There's going to be times where we're not going to see eye to eye with the leadership team, and we're trying to do admin and ops, and so she took us through some tools and examples there, and it was great just to go. Actually, yeah, there's a different way that we might be able to approach this. There's a more gospel way to do this. So I
I
enjoyed that.
love, I love the continuum that she showed us, the looking upstream and downstream. How would
Mhm.
Jesus respond to this? Do you remember
Yeah,
those bracelets? What would Jesus do? How would he be? What does the scripture say about the response to this
yeah,
particular, whether it's a situation or a difficulty or whatever? And then how am I going to implement that downstream that points back to Jesus?
yeah,
It was just an infinity loop, wasn't it? I've
yeah,
got my diagram here. So how would Jesus do this, and how does that impact culture?
yeah,
There were some really good questions. There weren't necessarily a load of answers here, but the
yeah.
tools
That's
always give
right.
us the ability to ask the questions, don't they?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was one of those things where you had to go away and do some work, and I hope yeah, church administrators go back and listen to it again and re look again at what some of the takeaway things were. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's worth saying, isn't it, that these talks are online, because one of the things I've got in front of me is how to create that healthy culture, because it's all very well
yeah,
talking about it, but sometimes you need to know where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah.
And these are sometimes benchmarks we can set ourselves as well. But that whole idea of vocabulary, language, how we do our communication, all leading to healthy culture. She explained that really well, but I'm
Yeah.
sure there's loads more to read and study on that.
Yeah. And it's great, isn't it? It's we can, I've caught myself saying, we're not a great team at praying together or something like that. And then you reflect on it and say, well, actually, what does a culture look like? What's my personal prayer like? Am I coming into the office and praying first? And my staff are aware that I'm doing that? Do we start every meeting with an opportunity for people to ask for prayer? What does our dependency look like on God? How are we praying into specific activities and stuff? And she was saying, if you want to build a gospel of prayer, how do you input? What are some of the inputs into the culture where we can see, and enjoy and celebrate those outputs that go out, and we're experiencing grace? And so it was a healthy talk. She had different examples, didn't she, that she walked us through and said, this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and this is how it works. You go, yeah, it's good. It's good.
It was a lot in there.
It was a lot
in there.
and it might be worth considering a conference that's dedicated to kind of a conversation like that. And I loved Jules's heart again, saying, how do we care for people in our workplaces? How do we do that? And particularly in the light of the topic being, trying to do more with less. There are points where you're going into intense zones, which is where Andy started, where it links all well together, where people are going to feel the pressure. We're going to feel the pressure, and we may be just kind of dumping some of that pressure on some of our staff and our volunteers and stuff. And actually, how do we care for them during this time? And recognizing that actually there are different zones and stuff that you think, actually, we're coming now into a zone where it's the summertime, where it's going to be a little bit easier. What are some of the inputs that we could put into the culture over this next month? And that's a good question I've been asking myself. Does that look like? Additional time for us to do a 15-minute Bible study together as a team? Does that mean we can get someone in to come and chat about an area? Or is it time for some training? What are some of these things now that we've got over the summer? We've got a little bit more time to think and a little bit more time to get ready for September. And I think there's some lots of good takeaways in this.
That was brilliant. It was
so good conference.
Really,
if you missed it, I hope we're encouraging you to kind of connect in and do something. I mean, there's no better thing at a conference than chatting to other administrators. It's great. Over the day, I got to speak to 10, 15 different people that are doing the same jobs, who are experiencing grace, and some that are facing difficulty. But to be able to stop and pray for each other, encourage each other, have lunch together, coffee breaks. I feel like the coffee break should have been longer, Pen. I'm going to put that out there.
Have you filled in your feedback form?
I think I have filled in my feedback form, actually. Yeah.
Note to self: put in longer coffee breaks.
Put it in there. Just that extended time to be together. I mean, we started the conference at 8:30. I was like, let's get going at 8:30. But I forget people. Your team were traveling from Bolton, so it was a fair way.
They were up at 5 in the morning.
Really, really good time. Really good, interesting time. So well done to particularly to Becky Thomas and the Cutting Edge team and the UCAN board and everyone for working hard to put this together. I think these are good, fruitful times, and so grateful to God for the blessings that they are. Penny, thank you for your time. Thank you for your reflections, and love having you on the podcast.
Until next time.
Yeah, it's great. And if there's anything that the church office could do, or you've got any follow-up questions that you want to ask me and Penny, then please get in contact at questions@thechurchoffice.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Love to connect to you. If there's any way that we can serve you, then we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for the listeners. Thank you for growing. We would love you to share this with another church administrator or someone in admin and ops who's working behind the scenes. Please pass the pod on and encourage them. And if you fancy writing a little review and a little summary about the podcast, then that would be amazing. Love it. Penny, thank you. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon. Goodbye, everyone.